Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor. So today, I've got a book haul for you. Now, here at the Manor, I might have mentioned in another video or two that we're having some work done on the Manor here very soon. And so we made an agreement, the lady of the Manor and I, that I wouldn't buy any more books for a while. You know? Because we're not going to have a ton of room, because we got to clear out the back of the Manor, and we're not going to have a ton of space. So, hold off on the book buying, why don't you, Mike? I bought some books during that time when I wasn't supposed to. So, this is going to be my last haul for a while. I'm not going to buy any more, I promise. So, here are the books in the Hall of Shame. The books I bought when I really shouldn't have. But these are them. Now, this first one is not actually something that I bought, but it's that somebody bought for me. Justin at This Just In got this fantastic book, Prophecy. Justin and I both are big fans of this terrible film, Prophecy. It's a film about a giant mutant bear that goes around killing folks. It's a pretty bad movie, but it's hilarious. And so he saw the novelization of this book, or this movie, A Story of Unrelenting Terror by the author of The Omen, David Seltzer. So he saw this and said, should I pick this up? And I'm like, hell yeah, you should. And so he picked this up for me. Thank you, Justin, for this fantastic book. So that one I didn't buy on my own, so I can get away with getting that. This next one I had pre-ordered. This is Christopher Ruocchio's Demon in White. This is the third volume in the Sun Eater series, a series I like an awful lot. I did a video on the first two books, but not too many people watched that video. But I did do one. And so this is the third volume, which I'm looking forward to reading. It's pretty long. Why'd you write such a big book, Christopher Ruocchio? But he got this one. I'm looking forward to reading it. I enjoy this series. So, Demon in White by Christopher Ruocchio. Now this next one is an interesting one. I heard about this author on John at Books of Blood's channel. So John at Books of Blood has talked about this guy. This is Jason Robert Ducharme. Come Forth in Thaw, 5 novellas. So I was kind of surprised to find this, but I found it. And this guy, Jason Robert Ducharme, is releasing some of the novellas in this book individually, has been releasing them individually recently. And I've been wondering if they're the same versions as what are in this volume. This volume came out a couple years ago, 2019. So I don't know if there's any changes between what's being released now and the versions that are in this book. If anybody knows, let me know, because I'm curious. But I was kind of happy to get this, since I had heard good things about Jason Robert Ducharme. So that's that. This next thing is pretty exciting. How could I not get this next thing? How could I not get it? This is Skullface Omnibus by Robert E. Howard. This is a British reprint of the first hardcover edition of Robert E. Howard's stories. This is a reprint of, if I can get to the title page here, a reprint of Skullface and Others, as it appears on the title page by Robert E. Howard. So Skullface Omnibus on the outside, Skullface and Others on the inside. A duplicate of the Arkham House edition. It also has, aside from a fantastic table of contents, this is probably the best collection of stories ever put together in a single volume by Robert E. Howard. It does have the tiniest print I've ever seen in a book. I mean, it's teensy tiny, man. You need a magnifying glass or some good glasses to read that. Fortunately, I do have some good glasses, because that is some tiny print. They duplicated a volume that was bigger, obviously, into this smaller volume. And it's just teensy. But it's a great book, and so I was pretty happy to find this. I could get the original if I wanted to, but it's like way expensive. I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on a book. I can't justify that to myself, even for Robert E. Howard. So I was pretty happy to get this one. This is pretty cool. Skullface Omnibus by Robert E. Howard. This next one is for the BookTube spin, which we had recently. The winner of that spin for me was Crossroads, which was suggested to me by Dave and Olive at the Book Blather. This is a novelette by Laurel Hightower, Crossroads. I've heard good things about it. It's really tinsy, so it shouldn't be too hard to read. I'll just squeeze that in there sometime soon. Now, there were 2 BookTube spins in that video, and when I made my BookTube spin video, I didn't realize that there was a second spin. The second spin for me landed on this book, which I already had, Thomas Ligoti's Songs of a Dead Dreamer and Grimscribe. I haven't actually read it. I read a lot of Ligotti in different anthologies and things, but I picked up this book and just have never read it. So now I have a pretty good excuse to read it. And plus it'll give me a good Sunday Penguin, you know, something to talk about on there. So Crossroads and that. Now this one, when I did the BookTube spin and I asked for suggestions for books, somebody suggested this book, The Dark Domain by Stefan Grabinski. And this is, I guess, a pretty big deal writer from Poland. The guy who, or the person, I don't remember actually who it was who suggested it. The person who suggested this, I think they called him the Polish Lovecraft or something like that. So of course I got it right away, even though I don't really think he's the Polish Lovecraft. I think he wrote very different stories from what I can tell from this. But that's okay. It's supposed to be really good. So The Dark Domain by Stefan Grabinski. This is pretty cool. I look forward to reading this one. So there's that. This next thing that I picked up is nonfiction. I heard about this on NPR. This is The Psychopath Inside, a neuroscientist's personal journey into the dark side of the brain. So I heard about this on the radio on NPR. And this guy, James Fallon, who wrote the book, was on the radio. And he's a neuroscientist. And he discovered that psychopaths have a very similar pattern in their brain when they do brain scans. So they did all these brain scans of psychopaths to check this out. And James Fallon had his brain scanned as a control. And it turned out he has the same pattern in his brain as psychopaths had. And he's like, what? That can't be right. So he goes home and he tells his wife, he says, can you believe it? I did a scan of my brain and my brain just looks just like a psychopath's. And then his wife's like, oh yeah, I could see that. And he's like, what? And he talks to his brother and he says, can you believe it? My brain scan looks just like a psychopath's. And his brother's like, that explains a lot. Yeah, that makes sense. Because it turns out this guy, James Fallon, he's a total dick and he didn't even know it. Like a lot of dicks, they don't know they're dicks until they find out later from somebody else. So this sounds really interesting. So this guy has like very little empathy and he's kind of conniving and he's got a lot of psychopath behaviors, even though he's not out killing folks or anything. But it sounds really interesting, how he comes to terms with that. Yeah, sounds like good stuff. So I got to read that sometime soon. This next one is a very different book. This one I had to get because it's The History of the Ancient World by Goodspeed. This is very old, so it's a pretty out-of-date history of the ancient world. This was published in 1912. But it's really cool. It's got a lot of nice plates like that all throughout this book. So George Stephen Godspeed, PhD, wrote this book, and it's pretty long. It's about 500 pages long. It's got a lot of cool plates, and like I said, it's going to be out of date, some of the information, but still it looks really interesting. And this book once belonged to Florence J. Schull, class of 1915. So Florence, I've got your book if you're watching. Probably not though. Probably not watching. So that was that. This next one looks kind of interesting. This is The Shards of Heaven by Michael Livingston. This is a fantasy book that's set in the Roman Empire. I think I bought this within the last couple months. I found it lying in the corner and I'm like, I remember buying that, but I think this is recent that I bought that. This recent-ish. But it's a fantasy novel, takes place in ancient Rome. So, of course, I'm going to want to read this one because that sounds right up my alley. This next one I found the other day in one of those little free libraries, you know, that are in front of some people's houses. It's a little beat up, but it's still a book I want to read. This is Gem by Frederick Full. I'd heard about this book, science fiction novel. I've heard a little bit about it, but I've never read it. So it was right there. It's free, hanging out in the free library. Better grab that one. So Gem by Frederick Full. I look forward to reading this and telling you fine folks about it. The next couple things are for my Stephen King Read Every Book By. Now this next one, The Lady of the Manor, actually got this for me. Despite forbidding me to purchase any books, she got this for me because she knows about the whole Stephen King thing I'm doing. And it's going to be a while before I get to it. Because this is in the 90s, I think. I think it's the 90s. This is Stephen King's Bag of Bones. Excellent cover to this one. Don't know how the book is, because this is one that I have not read. But excellent cover at any rate. So one of these days I'll get to this because I am reading every book by Stephen King. And so this is one of those. So I'll get to that eventually. This next one I'll be getting to quicker though, because this is the early 80s. And this brings me into the comic books, which I've been buying. This is Stephen King's Creepshow. This is great. This was a fun movie. I think the comic book that was written by Stephen King and illustrated by Bernie Wrightson is even better than the movie. It's an excellent, excellent comic book. Just fantastic art. Bernie Wrightson is probably the best horror artist in comics. He was the co-creator of the Swamp Thing, and he just does brilliant work in this comic book. I got my cake. It's just fantastic stuff. And this one, I remember reading this. This is a fantastic, just a fantastic comic book. Yeah, just great stuff in this comic. It was a good movie too, but excellent, excellent comic. Good stuff. I think this was 1982. So when I get to the 80s and my Read Every Book by Stephen King, this is one that I'll definitely have a good time reading. All right. Now, you know, on Wednesdays, I do my Epic Comic Book Wednesday. And I've gotten a few Epic collections this last couple months. Make some room for these over here. The most recent one I got, Marvel Epic Collections, is Thor, Volume 20. This is the final gauntlet, which is the early 90s of Thor. I'm a big Thor fan, so I was happy to get this big guy, the Mighty Thor Volume 20. This one here is a reprint of a comic that I missed when it was first published in Epic form. This is Epic Collection Power Man and Iron Fist Volume 1 Heroes for Hire. This was a lot of fun, this comic. So I'm happy to get this, so I'll be able to read Power Man and Iron Fist once again. It's been a while since I've read any Power Man and Iron Fist. Then I've got a couple Avengers Epic Collections. This is Volume 6, which is 1972 to 73. So that was cool to get that. And another Avengers one. This was a reprint of a volume that I missed when it came out. This is Volume 9. Epic Collections are not published in order. It's a whole confusing thing. This is The Avengers, Volume 9, 1976 through 1977. So I think now I've got every Marvel Avengers Epic Collection that they've published. Then I've got Black Panther, Volume 3. The Black Panther. Excellent Marvel Epic Collection here. This is from 1989 through 94 for Black Panther. And finally, the last Marvel Epic Collection I've got recently is the Submariner Enter. The Submariner. So some good stuff that I'll be talking about eventually, probably, on my Epic Marvel Wednesdays. Thrilling stuff. So this next one is pretty big. This is Superman. I'm a huge Superman fan. And this is Superman by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. That Superman omnibus. And this is the Superman Rebirth stuff that came out a few years ago when the original Superman came back after the New 52 Superman was around, and that was a whole lame thing. But at this point in Superman's life, he's got a son, and that's his son right there. And this is an excellent run of Superman. It's a pretty big book, but it's fantastic. I was really happy to see all this stuff reprinted in omnibus form. Great stuff. And it's very heavy. But good Superman comics. Put that over there. And finally, the last thing I have to show you is another omnibus, but this is a Marvel omnibus. This is gigantic. This is the Man-Thing. The Man-Thing is kind of like Marvel's version of Swamp Thing, which came out around the same time, I believe, as Swamp Thing. And this is just a huge collection of Man-Thing comics. You can ask, geez, Mike, why the heck did you get that big old thing? I don't know. Just so I can say that I've got a gigantic Man-Thing, I guess, because I do. It's right here. So that, my friends, was the shameful end to my book haul of shame. I hope you enjoyed it. Catch me tomorrow when I talk about just one book. Tomorrow I will be talking about Dune, the novel Dune, which I finished recently from the first book in my Frank Herbert-a-thon. So that'll be cool. So catch me tomorrow here at Stately Vaughan Manor.